Hey guys, it's JaffiePlays. Today we're talking Wayfinder, specifically the 6 initial characters, 3 of which are starter characters that you're able to pick from. I say initial due to this being a live service game that devs plan to support for years to come. With that being said, this means there will be new characters entering the game on a seasonal basis. You can expect all future characters to be covered on this channel. I want to quickly mention that each of the 6 characters will have 4 main character abilities, 1 passive ability, and 1 weapon ability, with weapon abilities changeable depending on the weapon you have equipped. I think it's also worth noting that all characters mentioned start with a signature weapon, but this does not stop you from being able to use any other weapon types on any character. Currently the 4 weapon types are sword and shield, daggers, 2-hand weapons, and guns. Each of the weapons will have its own unique abilities. I will not be going over each weapon ability today, but maybe in a future video. Wingrave, the first of 6 total characters. This character is one of the 3 starting characters you'll be able to pick from. This initial choice of the 3 starting characters is important, as in this game, grinding the crafting materials to create a new character will take some time. It is estimated to take over 40 hours to create the character. Wingrave is likely to be the easiest out of the 6 initial characters, and a forgiving character as his skill set is built around healing or shielding his group. The first of his 4 abilities is Righteous Strike. This makes it so that when he's hitting an enemy, it will heal Wingrave and all nearby allies. The second ability is Radiant Pulse. This ability will create a shield in front of Wingrave that blocks projectiles and boosts defenses of all allies standing behind the shield. The third ability is Judgment. This ability will do an area of effect around Wingrave, and if a monster is hit, will mark them with a halo above their heads. If the enemy is marked, it will allow anyone that hits that enemy to restore their own health. The fourth and final ability, and one that I would consider to be more of an ultimate ability, is Divine Aegis. This ability will create a powerful bubble that will make anyone in your party stand inside that bubble to become immune to damage and also heal over time. This ability is very powerful and one that will be very useful in a majority of groups. Wingrave's passive ability is Healing Pulse. Melee finishers will heal Wingrave and one nearby ally. Lastly, Wingrave's signature weapon will be a sword and shield. Wingrave seems like an overall good pick for anyone looking for a chill playstyle and a very helpful character that will be sought after by a lot of groups and solo play due to the constant healing and protection features the character wields. Also, if you're into more beefy paladin classes from traditional MMOs such as World of Warcraft, this is the character to pick. Moving on to Silo, the second of the 6 characters. This character is also one of the 3 starting characters. Silo is a ranged class, well initially is, but you can also play him with dagger and sword and shield, or even the 2-hander if you want. That being said, I do believe his kit is best suited to be with a longer ranged weapon. Silo's skill set seems to be built more around AoE, slowing and burning enemies to death. First of the 4 abilities is Firebomb. Using this ability will cause Silo to throw a firebomb towards enemies dealing damage over time. This ability will work very well with the next ability. The second ability is Oil Bomb. This ability leaves a pool of oil in front of Silo. This will cause the enemies to be slowed and cause them to take additional damage. As I said before, this ability will work very well with the Firebomb, as it will allow then the Firebomb to be thrown into the oil and cause a chain reaction to enemies affected. The third ability is Proto-Clone. This will allow Silo to dash backwards out of danger, leaving a clone behind that will then pull the enemies towards that clone. The clone would also taunt the enemies into attacking it. As you can imagine, this would now work very well with the kit we've already mentioned. You cast your third ability, leave the clone behind, have all the enemies go towards that clone, then Oil Bomb and Firebomb onto that, leaving all enemies dead. The fourth and final ability, aka the ultimate ability, is Arc Nemesis. Silo will send an egg out that will shock all enemies within the area of effect, dealing a burst of damage. Also, the egg will remain in that area for a short amount of time, slowing and dealing damage over time to enemies within the radius. This is a very strong ability for clumped up enemies that could well once again be changed with the 3 other abilities quite well as you could imagine. Silo's passive ability is Strategic Advantage. Deals bonus melee and range damage to enemies that are debuffed. Lastly, Silo's signature weapon will be a gun. Silo seems like a very strong AoE character that will clear clumps of mobs within seconds. I can see him shining in bosses with a lot of extra monsters being constantly spawned into the arena, and a very strong addition to any group with what seems to be like a very strong port roll. This is the third of 6 total characters. This character is the last of the 3 starting characters. This is a close quarters combat class that uses daggers and speed as their core way to take down enemies. Niss's skill set is all about dashing around the battlefield, causing chaos and a lot of damage. She will be one of the fastest characters in the game, if not the fastest out of the initial 6. The first of 4 abilities is Shadow Step. Using this ability will cause Niss to dash forward in a straight line, dealing damage. Then after a short delay, a clone of her will dash from where you initially dashed from, dealing additional damage to the enemies. The second ability is Umbra Aura. This will empower, which will cause her next 3 dodges that she does to do damage to the closest enemy from herself. The third ability is Vengeful Shade. This will allow Niss to become immune briefly to any incoming attacks, and also deal a small amount of damage in front of her using the daggers that she will throw out. The fourth and final ability is the ultimate ability, Gloom Shroud. This ability is very simple and very strong as it allows her first ability, Shadow Step, to be cast unlimited times within a time frame for no cost. This is really strong, and Shadow Step is a decently big damage dealer. The best time to use this ability is when you've drained your initial Shadow Step charges to 0. You can then cast this ability and spam Shadow Step. Another tip would be lock onto your target before using this, as when you free cast the ability you could miss a lot of the time. Niss's passive ability is Linger in Shadow. After dodging, gain attack power for a short duration. Lastly, Niss's signature weapon will be daggers. Niss seems to be a very strong pick if you want to be fast around the field and deal a lot of damage at the same time. Not much has to be said here other than she's going to be very powerful and if played right, very hard to kill, especially with characters like Wingrave in the team. I think it's a good time to note that the next 3 characters mentioned will not be a part of the starting characters you can pick from. You have to craft these characters in order to play them. Senja is the 4th character out of the 6 total. Senja is a very close quarters tank / support that will use 2-hand weapons to obliterate enemies on the field. Senja's skill set is all about taunting enemies to attack her, which causes her to gain more damage and ability power whilst also taking reduced damage. This is a very cool and unique character in my opinion. The first of the 4 abilities is Gladiator Pummel. Senja punches forward initially, then you can choose to hold the ability causing Senja to showboat, basically flex on the enemies. On release of the ability, she will punch again and buff her next weapon attack, but if you choose to showboat and fully commit to completing the showboating, then your follow-up punch will have increased damage. The second ability is Gain Favor. This ability allows you to hold the button once again to showboat for the crowd, and upon releasing, taunt all the enemies whilst also buffing Senja and her allies. The third ability is Lightning Grasp. Senja uses lightning in order to pull all displaceable enemies towards Senja within a large area in front of her. The fourth and final ability, the ultimate, is Grand Finale. Senja will transform into a lightning spear and soar towards the enemy and smash the enemy with her fist, dealing huge damage in what seems to be a bit of an area instead of a single target. Also, upon finishing the ability will also fully feel the crowd's favor. Senja's passive ability is Crowd Favorite. Holding her first or second ability down will cause Senja to showboat. While showboating, she will not be staggerable, takes reduced damage, and increases the crowd's favor. As the crowd's favor increases, she gains attack damage and ability power. Lastly, Senja's signature weapon will be a 2-hand greatsword. Senja is a great character if people want to hold a lot of the enemy's attention whilst allowing their teammates to dish out damage. This does not mean she won't pack a punch herself, but overall it seems her goal is to be the brunt of the engagement and buff her teammates as well as herself for the final grand blow to deal some serious damage. This is not normally a character I would play, but I'm very intrigued to try her out. Kyros is the 5th out of 6 characters. Kyros is a melee based mage character described as a war mage, who uses a scythe as his main weapon initially. Kyros' skill set is all about dealing quick and devastating damage alongside being very close to the enemy considering he is a mage. The first of 4 abilities is Savage Rake. Kyros will rake the ground in 2 directions, left and right in front of him, dealing damage to all enemies. Arcane fragments can be consumed to cast his skill with 0 cost. Second ability is Siphon Radiant. This ability casts a wave of energy around Kyros' position that will cause damage to enemies and absorb arcane power. This ability will reduce cooldowns of any other ability and grant an arcane fragment. I would use this ability after using other abilities in Kyros' kit. Third ability is Arcane Focus. This marks enemies within its area. As enemies are hit within the area, the marks build up power and then detonate at max, dealing damage. The fourth and final ability, the ultimate, is Hand of Reckoning. Kyros summons a hand from the sky, slamming down on the floor below, dealing massive damage to enemies within a large radius. Kyros' passive ability, Arcane Fragments. You generate arcane fragments by using the second ability, Siphon Radiant, on enemies, or by landing combo finishers. Arcane fragments are then automatically consumed to grant extra charges for the first ability, Savage Rake. Lastly, Kyros' signature weapon will be a scythe. Kyros overall, his kit seems simple, but seems very strong, and I love the idea of a close range mage style character that is fast paced. This character seems bread and butter damage dealer with strong abilities and a very cool looking theme. Venomess is the 6th and final character out of the 6 initial characters, also the most recently revealed. Venomess is a ranged character with a gun, but I'm sure can be played with melee just as easily. Venomous' skill set seems to be very support / healer-esque, and I assume to be one of the more picked characters out of the 6. The first of the 4 abilities is Transfusion. Venomous shoots a volley of poisonous needles that will lock onto the enemies, dealing damage. Upon hitting an enemy with a needle, this will cause a healing projectile to pop out of the enemy and will seek the closest Wayfinder to the projectile. The projectile will heal over time based on the number of stacks of venom that is applied onto the enemy. The second ability is Vampiric Blast. You launch a bomb that absorbs up to 5 nearby poison clouds. After a brief delay, the bomb will explode, dealing damage to enemies and healing allies with an area of effect, based on the number of poison clouds that it absorbed previously. The third ability is Venom Thrusters. You dash in a direction which seems to be based on the input direction. So if you're pushing left, you'll dash left and so on, which will leave a trail of poison clouds behind you. Poison clouds will damage and apply stacks of venom to enemies. The fourth and final ability, the ultimate, Deep Breath. You fire a massive explosion that rains down from the sky, dealing damage and applying 5 stacks of Empowered Venom to enemies within the blast radius. Empowered Venom deals damage over time and counts as additional stacks of venom for the passive ability Master of Venoms and the first ability Transfusion. Venomous' passive ability is Master of Venoms. Weapon hits apply venom, dealing damage over time and stacking up to 5 times. Weapon hits against enemies with 5 stacks of venom will create a poison cloud that deals damage and applies stacks of venom. A poison cloud can only be created by the effect once every 5 seconds. Lastly, Venomous' signature weapon will be a gun. Venomous overall is what seems to be a very strong healer and support class with the ability to use AoEs to remove enemies from the field effectively, whilst also handing out passive heals on the side. No focus, just pure slaying and heal gameplay, and what seems to be like a very fun character to play, one I'm sure many people will be playing and loving. That is all 6 characters. I should quickly note this is all 6, but there technically is one more. But it's not a unique character, it's more of a variant called the Heroic Wayfinder. This one will be coming with the Founders Pack, and to be exact, the $150 Founder Pack. Although this shouldn't be a worry as they will be releasing more heroic versions later in the game's life cycle. Think Warframe with its Prime variant. This is just an exclusive Founders one as a way of saying thank you to the people that are back in the game early. A little bit like Warframe did with the original Excalibur. Every future one will be earnable in game. If you want this one, unfortunately you're going to have to be dishing up $150. The Heroic Wayfinder has a few small benefits, such as bigger echo space, additional echo capacity per level up to level 30, and lastly a 5% increase to stats compared to the regular Wayfinders, this being the attack power and ability power. The Heroic Wayfinder is Kyros, and he has a very cool skin attached. With that being said, I hope this helps inform you about all the characters and their abilities within the game, and hopefully it helps you make a decision on what you end up playing. I personally will be playing Niss initially and then moving on to Kyros or Venomess second. Which Wayfinder will you be playing on launch, and what Founders Pack will you be getting? Or will you just be waiting for free to play? Let me know in the comments below. I look forward to seeing you all inside of Wayfinder and in the next video.